How's it going? Welcome to Poker Luck number 33. And not great news. I was running so good, as if you saw my previous vlog. I was up 15 sessions in a row. Definitely amazing. But after vlog 32, it was a nightmare. I had the worst run of my life. The 4 sessions after that, it started when I lost my biggest pot ever, kings against aces, and like a $3,200 pot. And this day after day after day, those next 4 days were pretty brutal as well. We don't want to go too much into that. So yeah, we're gonna go at it today. Hopefully, every day's independent. I try not to believe in bad runs, as if you're gonna keep on losing. The same like good runs every day is its own thing. So let's just focus, head on in there, and hopefully we could run good for the last 2 sessions, because yeah, after being down 4K in 4 days, we are definitely a good amount below average, below what we need to make to not make our bankroll drop with the expenses. So I do not expect to hit the goal this month. The bankroll is going to drop a little bit. It is what it is. And yeah, let's just do our best to play our best. And that's all I could ask for. So yeah, let's head on in and play poker. All right, let's head into the poker room. We buy in for $300 since we're gonna get started with 1-3. So let's head over to the table and jump right into the first hand. We get a nice welcome with ace queen suited in the cutoff. There's 2 limpers, I make it $20. Small blind calls. Now under than one decides to go all in, but it's just $31. Other limper folds onto us, and only thing I could do here is call, since it's just $11 more, and my raise was 17. So I cannot 4-bet sadly, so I call. So does a small blind. So 3 ways to a flop with 1 player all in. Flop comes 10 high, small blind checks, and with 1 player all in that we can't get to fold, I decide to check back. Turn is a 7. Once again, small blind checks, and I don't see the purpose in betting now, so I check back, happy to get the showdown. River is a 3. Now small blind does bet. He makes it $40. I don't think much to do here. We just have ace high in a spot. I don't think small blind's ever bluffing, since he's got to go to showdown with under than 1. So I do fold. Under than 1 flips over ace 7, and it's good, surprisingly. So not sure what small blind was betting with. My guess is a 7 with a worse kicker, but we'll never know. Under than 1 takes it down. Let's see if we could do better at 5-6 suited and low jack. Under than 1 limps, so make it $15, and I get the hijack, big blind, and limper to call. So 4 ways to a flop. Flop is 7-8-7. It's not the worst. Bottom end of a straight draw and a backdoor flush draw. But now under than 1 leads out for $15 onto us, and leads could be pretty strong, but usually I think he could have trips, way more likely if there was a flush draw, since he doesn't want it to check around and give a free card. So altogether, I do think, since it's a pretty dry board, that's more likely it's an 8 that is worried of overcards, and definitely not folding. I was considering if I should ever raise, but not a fan of that, since I have 2 more players in this hand that definitely could have 7s. And if I had to set myself, I think I'd just call as well, because there's not too many scary turn cards. Sure, someone could have a straight up. Altogether, I do think I'd be calling with my 7s. So if I want to turn my hand into a bluff later, I think it'd be still very realistic if I just call now and raise in later streets. So I do call, and other 2 players fold. So heads up to a turn. Turn is pretty good. It's a queen. So yeah, we still have 6 high, but now we got a flush draw to go with our straight draw, and that is a scare card. If he does have 8, that I think is more likely he has, and I think so even more when he bets again $15. So I don't think he's ever betting this small with a 7. This just seems like an 8 that now wants to get the showdown cheaply, and we're not gonna let that happen, especially on sets a good turn to bluff with. I make it $50. He thinks for a little bit and does call. River is not what we're hoping for. It's another 7. So I was planning on bluffing the river on every card except a 7 or an 8. Because sure, I could be doing this with a queen because he bets so small. I think a queen's always good, but I don't know if this player thinks I would do that. And if I bet here and this player thinks it's a 7 or nothing, I think he's calling a lot with all of his 8, since there is a lot of missed flush draws and straight draws. And I definitely have to bet really big, and altogether on this sets a bad river to bluff on. I did not think if I'd get a fold, so I do just give up and check back, and he flips over ace 8. So indeed he had an 8, and he takes it down. After this, we call for the wheel promotion, so we spin. Let's see if we get hit 1,000. It gets pretty close, but sadly we end up short and take $50. Let's get back to playing. Now we're playing 5-handed. We looked at an ace-10 off in the button. The cutoff limps, so I make it $15 and get the big blind and cut off the call, so 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes queen, 4, deuce, so not much, an overcard, and a backdoor straight draw, pretty promising. When it checks to us, both the big blind and limper, I think it'd be pretty weak, and it's a pretty dry board, so if they don't have a queen, I think I'm going to get a lot of folds, so I make it $15. And I just get the big blind to call, so heads up to our turn. Turn is a king, and now things get interesting. So the big blind leads out for $15, and this was definitely a pretty weird line I don't see often, and just doesn't make much sense to me for value. In a moment, I just felt like he's betting super small, just hoping that I'll call, and he wants to get cheap to showdown. Donk bets usually are that, especially when the overcard comes, because if he hit the king, he probably has 2 pair, so I don't think he's floating with some random kings on that flop. And if he had 2 pair, I don't think he'd be trying to get so cheap to showdown. I think he'd be trying to get more money in by betting bigger with a donk bet or by check raising. So with just a gut shot against a guy that seems like he's trying to tell us that he's very weak and he doesn't want to put a lot of money into the pot, we are going to make him put a lot of money into the pot. I raise him to $45 and doesn't do the trick yet since he calls. River is a 9. It looks pretty safe. If he has queen 9, it is what it is. And I don't think he has jack 10. I just don't think he's calling a flop with that hand. So let's go with our read that donk bet on the turn was weak. I make it $110. Does do the trick since he folds and we take it down. Now we look down at the first premium of the session, pocket kings, and under the gun we're playing 6-handed. I make it $12 and I get the hijack, small blind, and big blind to call. So 4 ways to a flop. Flop is very interesting. Deuce, 4, ace. So what you always dread when you have kings, ace on the flop, but we got the nut flush draw, so super interesting spot when it checks to me. I wasn't sure if I should be betting here. I mean, am I turning my kings into a bluff if I decide to bet it, just using it as blocking a nut flush draw if we hit? Altogether, I just felt like I didn't need to. I think plenty of times maybe no one has an ace, and if I'm betting, am I just getting all the worst hands to fold? Maybe if I bet small, worse flush draws will call. Altogether, definitely not sure about this spot, but in the moment, I decide to check, and it checks around. Turn is a 10. Small blind checks, but a big blind does bet. He makes it $20 and happy calling here with the king's nut flush draw. So that's what I do. Hijack calls as well. Small blind folds, so 3 ways to a river. River is no help. It's a 10, and now the big blind doesn't slow down. He bets $70 and definitely looks strong. I mean, maybe he could be bluffing because both me and hijack check the flop, so maybe we're not too strong. But altogether, 1-3 when he gets 2 calls on the turn. I just felt like he wasn't bluffing. And as well, the hijack could have 10s played this way, checks the flop, hits on a turn, and now has trips. So altogether, I don't think my kings are good here most of the time, so I do fold. Hijack raises to 70. The big blind ends up folding, and the hijack flips over pocket deuces. For flop set, river full house. So indeed, our kings were not good. The hijack takes it down. So definitely poker in difficult mode lately, and it was getting me frustrated, especially after the last 4 sessions, the worst run I've ever had, the most money I've lost in such a small amount of time, and just today just feels more of the same. And I'm just trying to stay focused, just remind myself that bad runs aren't a really thing. I think sometimes people, when they think they're in a bad run, they just start playing worse as well. So just remind myself every session, every hand is independent from the other. So let's just focus on the next hand and try to play our best. Still 6-handed, we looked at a king queen off in the cutoff. I make it $12 and we get a small blind and a big blind to call. So 3 ways to a flop. And we finally see a good flop for our hand. 8 king queen. We flop top 2. Checks to us. I just hope someone has something. I bet $20. Small blind folds, but the big blind does call. So heads up to a turn. Turn is a 4. He checks, and on such a draw heavy board, I'm a bet big because people don't like to fold draws. And if he did hit the board, he may put us on a draw and call light. So I make it $60. But there's no more value to get since this time he does fold and we take it down with top 2. Now with the big blind, we look down at pocket queens. The button straddle is going on when hijack limps, folds to us. I make it $25 and only hijack calls, so heads up to a flop. And once again, the flop's very nice. 7 queen deuce. We flop top set, the nuts. So definitely a hard spot to get value from since we're blocking top pair. But if I bet small, I think I'm going to get called pretty light. All the pocket pairs, middle pair, or even ace highs. So I make it $15 and see the good news when he does call. Turn is pretty interesting. It's an ace. Now we're just hoping he has that. And I check in a moment. And I do like this because, or A, he has an ace. And if he does, I do think he's betting this turn when we check. And if he's not, we're blocking queens. And even if he does have the last queen of the deck, when the ace comes on the turn, I don't know if we get 3 streets of value. And if he doesn't have an ace or a queen, I think everything is folding on his turn. So I do check, but see the bad news when he checks back. River is a deuce. We're a full house. We're not checking again. Let's just hope he has a queen or maybe an ace with bad kicker. I don't know how many of those he'd have. Or who knows? Maybe he's got a deuce and we get raised and we get $30. But doesn't seem like he has much since he does fold and we take it down with a full house. The premiums keep on coming. Since now we have ace king off and hijack, the straddle is going on. 101 limps, 102 raises to $26. That definitely look pretty strong early position raise in these games that people like to limp, and the straddle is going on. So I think they're even extra tight. But of course, with ace king, I'm 3-betting. I make it $75. Now things get interesting since folds to the button and he goes all in for $91. That was pretty funny in the moment because he wanted to straddle in the button, but under the gun has priority. And once he got his hand, he joked saying he's happy he didn't have to straddle because his hand's no good. So he said that, and now he jams over a raise in a 3-bet. And I even told him that, and he just kind of laughed. And this guy is super action, so I don't think he has a premium. I think he was serious about him not having a very strong hand. He just sometimes likes to gamble. And of course, we got ace king. So under 2 calls definitely looks strong, and all we can do here is call because the jam wasn't big enough to reopen the action. So that's what we do. 3 ways to a flop with 1 player all in. Flop is 10, 6, 7, so we do not hit. 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, but 102 now leads out all in for $240, and I thought he was strong pre-flop, and this just looks like he has overpairs. He just didn't want to jam himself pre-flop. He wanted to see a flop and make sure it's safe, and now he's jamming, so I just don't think I could call with ace king here, so I do fold. To my immense surprise, he flips over king queen. So he jammed with king high with 1 player all in, and me that 3-bet pre-flop that could have plenty of overpairs. I don't know what goes through some of these players' minds. He later said that he didn't want to let me get there. That makes even less sense since he has king high, and I have mostly hands that have that beat almost always. And as if that was not annoying enough, turn is a deuce of spades and river is a 4 of spades. So we would have run the nut flush. And yeah, this was definitely pretty frustrating. And altogether, the button took it down because indeed he did not have a strong hand. He had 6-4 suited. So he has 2 pair that in this case is good. And I definitely had to focus on just breathing, on playing my game and not being affected by what is out of my control, because this is part of running bad and variances as well, because most of the time I would be winning this pot because almost never king high is just going to decide to donk jam all in on the flop. Most of the time he's going to check, I'm going to check back, and we're going to get the showdown, and I'm going to hit my flush and I'm going to take down this pot that is almost $300. But in this case, it was not, because sometimes people lose their mind like it happened here. And yeah, let's just focus. I do have to say this got me pretty frustrated. And yeah, not much to do about it. Let's focus and move on to the next hand. Now in a small blind with ace queen off, there's 2 limpers, so I make it $20 and only under and call, so heads up to a flop. Flop comes jack 10 8, so gut shot, 2 overcards, back to a flush draw. I do like betting here, but in the moment I just felt like this was a pretty good board for him. He could have plenty of 2 pairs and straights, but I still like betting. If it get raised, well, I think we could fold since that's pretty nutted. And if we do bet, well, we could get value from flush draws that we've been beating, straight draws, and if he does call with a jack, middle pair, bottom pair, there's a lot of good turn cards that we could barrel on and get him to fold all of those. So I do like betting, but in the moment I check and he checks back. Turn is beautiful. It's a king, so we have a straight and a queen high flush draw, and now let's bet. I don't think he has too many flush draws. I think he'll be betting a decent amount on the flop with those. And of course, I'm not checking here, so I make it $30. And we see the good news when he calls. River is a 3. Let's keep on getting value. I really didn't think he had a flush here. I just think it's very unlikely. Apart from us having a queen of diamonds, he would have had to check the flop with a flush draw and just call my turn bet with the flush. So maybe once in a while he has it, but definitely way too tight checking here with a straight. We can still get value from a lot of kings. He could have 2 pairs. But I'm not a fan of the size I make it. I go $100. That definitely I just think is too big. Maybe if the flush didn't come in and we target kings, that could be putting us on some missed draws. But when the flush does come in, it just feels a little too big. And indeed, he does fold. So honestly, not a huge fan of how I played this hand, but anyways, we take it down. This brings us to the last hand of 1-3. We're looking at 4-5 suited in the cutoff. Under than 1 limp, so I make it $15 and get the small blind and limper to call. So 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 3 deuce 4, so pretty interesting. Top pair and an open-ended straight draw. When it checks to us, I'm betting here. I want to bet big because one thing is we need a lot of protection since almost every turn card is going to be an overcard. I'm going to bet small and just get overcards to be floating, and now I don't know where I'm at. I'm probably gonna have to check almost every turn, of course, if the straight doesn't come in. And that's another thing. If someone has a straight draw, we could get value from all of that. So let's bet. I make it $25. Small blind calls, under than 1 folds. So heads up to a turn. Turn is a queen. He checks. And this was definitely an interesting spot. Maybe I should be betting here if he's on a draw to get value from that, not give him a free river. I just felt if I bet here, it'd just be going a little too thin. It's definitely small blind could just have over pairs that just call pre-flop and is calling on the flop. Or maybe you could have a top pair, better kicker, like maybe with a suited ace or king, or maybe even queen, then I was 2 pair that was being this anyway. So in the moment, I didn't want to just take ourselves to value town against better hands. And we have a straight draw as well, so it's not the worst thing. If the straight comes in, we'll have it. So I decided to check back. River is another queen, and he checks, and it just felt a little too thin betting here. Maybe if I had a good kicker ball together, I do think there's still a little chance that he had a pocket pair better than our hand. So I do decide to check, just thinking that if I bet, I'm just gonna get called by better. And we are good. So that will end 1-3 for us, since the opening 2-5 was not the best start since we're down $150, but in 2-5 that is not much. So let's head over to the bigger game, add on to be at $1,000 and jump right into the first hand. First hand, we got ace queen off in the low jack. I make it $15 and only the hijack calls, so heads up to a flop. Flop comes king 4 deuce, so not much going on for us. Back to our straight draw, but yeah, that is not much, especially on a flush draw board. We got 1 overcard, but I decided to put out a C bet. This player flat calling me in this spot, I think it'd be having a lot of pocket pairs, and I think with the king there, we can't get those to fold, so I make it $20. But he does call. Thankfully, the turn is very good. It's an ace, and now let's get some value. I think my top pair is always good here. I don't think he ever has ace king. He's always 3-bet net pre-flop, and maybe ace deuce, raise 4, but just suited. So altogether, just 4 combos. You could have plenty of kings and flush draws. So I make it $50. And once again, he calls. River is a 6, and I'm hoping he has a king and puts us on a flush draw that missed. I make it $100. He thinks for a little bit and does call. I show, and we are good, but by a stronger hand than I thought, ace jack. So he had the nut flush draw on the flop and turn top pair as well. So definitely pretty nasty run out for him, and we take it down with top pair. After this hand, not too much goes on for us. We just go card diff for a decent amount of time until we look down at a premium. We're in the cutoff with ace king off. Hijack makes it $15, so I 3-bet to 45. Button cold calls, and so does the hijack. So 3 ways in this 3-bet pot. Flop comes 8, 10, 10, so not much going on for us. When it checks to us, I check. Button does bet. He makes it $45. And when the hijack calls, I just don't think I could be calling here with ace high, so I do fold, and that brings us to the last hand of 2-5. We look down at pocket 3s and under than 2. Under the gun and under than 1 limp, so I make it $25, and they both call. So 3 ways to a flop. Flop is beautiful. King 10-3 flop bottom set. And when it checks to us, I felt like these players, if one of them have a king, it's very likely we will be able to get 3 suits of value from them. So if I bet big on the flop, it would be easier to get it all in by the river. And there is a straight draw as well. So let's get greedy. I make it $50. But it may have been a little too greedy since they both sadly end up folding. So maybe they just didn't have anything. I don't think to fold in a king. So always nice to flop a set. Sadly, not much value to get. So with that, we end our session. So let's rack up, cash out, and see how we did. All right, we had to call it early because my daughter's sick and I got to go home to help out because she's not going to sleep. So we ended up calling it like an hour and 20 minutes early. And yeah, not the funnest session. It started pretty rough, not being able to really win pots. And in that super wacky one when a guy just decided to donk all in with king high when one player was all in, is who knows? I have no clue what his thought process was behind there. And yeah, so altogether, let's see numbers. I was down like 150 from 1-3, but then I made $50 promotion, so altogether like down 100 from there. And I was breaking even in 2-5 until the pocket threes that a flop bottom set, and I bet a little big, that I think it was a little too big, but anyways, they're very sticky, and I felt like trying to get max value, both of them. And yeah, that was the profit basically. So I made $60 from 2-5. So altogether, we sadly had another losing session, but just $40. All right, so I'll take it. Just after how the previous 4 sessions were, being down $40 feels pretty nice. Like, it's crazy how your mind gets used to different things like so quickly. And when you're running good on winning, just breaking even, like the fact that I had sets bad 4 sessions, like just being down $40 feels pretty nice. That's how brutal the previous ones was. So anyways, probably it's going to be a shorter vlog than the usual ones because we call it a little early, but hopefully there were some interesting hands. I hope you guys liked it. If you could, like usual, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Always happy talking about hands, and I'll see you guys next week.